seeing it yet. Sending data. Just double checking that we're actually live on YouTube. And here we are. Perfect. Excellent. Welcome everyone to our live stream. With me here today, I've got Konstantin from Fastgen.
Hello, everyone.
So we're really happy to be able to work together today. We've planned to build an app for you. And the idea we have today is we want to build an application that lets you get out of meetings with a very good excuse. So the basic idea is that you'll go to this app and then you'll pick one of our pre-built excellent excuses. You'll type in your phone number and then pick a delay for it to send you a message. And then the application will wait a little bit and then send you a text message with this fantastic excuse for why you actually need to get out of this meeting. So I'm really excited about this. We've been looking forward to it for a while. And the way this is going to work is for the first half, we are going to be looking at Fastgen, getting a little bit of a quick intro to how that works. And then we're going to start building the backend for this app. So where you get an endpoint, you receive your request from the toddle app we're going to build, schedule this text message and everything we need here, right? And then finally, we'll go and actually build an interface for this in toddle. And then, of course, in between and after, there'll be questions that you can ask us about what's going on and what we're building, right? So I don't know if you have anything to add, Konstantin, or otherwise, I think we should just kind of get into it.
Yeah, let's dive right in.
Excellent. So we will start in Fastgen, and I'm just sharing your screen now.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm in a blank project in Fastgen here. Maybe quick intro what Fastgen is and can do. Fastgen is a low-code backend builder. Essentially, the main features you get with Fastgen is a flow builder where you can spin up fully functional API endpoints and workflows in a matter of seconds. You get a hosted PostgreSQL, and we have a user management feature that makes it easier for you to spin up user management for your apps. So yeah, should we just dive right in and start with our database?
Yeah, that sounds really good. So what is the first step we're going to do now?
I would have said we start with our DB and just set up a table with the keys that we'll need later. Afterwards, I'd be thinking we set up an endpoint where a toddle can send the relevant data to. And last but not least, a workflow that actually takes care of checking whether there are any messages to send and then does so.
That sounds good.
Okay, so actually, let me start from scratch here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new table. The wrong project here. Give me 1 second. That should work. Okay, there we go. And let's call this one message requests. So this is the table where we want to store all the messages that will be sent from the front end to be sent out at a later date. So let's think about what kind of data points we need. We need a phone number where we can send the message to. We need the text of the message that we want to send, the time at which the message should be sent, and last but not least, I think it would be helpful to add a status field to keep track of which messages have already been sent and which are just scheduled for later. So let's just start with that. We'll add phone number, our message, time at which we want to send it out. I'll set that to the correct data type. And lastly, a status.
And so what are we doing with can you explain a little bit what the status is doing here? I think the message scheduling time and number makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So with the status, I mean, there's two ways how we could approach this. One way would be once a message has been sent, we just remove it from the database. Another approach, which I would opt for here, is to add a status field. So we can keep track if, for example, Twilio fails to send a message, that we could retry at a later time instead of just discarding the message without it actually being sent out there. So I'd be thinking we can have a status of a scheduled message, sent message, and then maybe a failed one if anything happens during the sending. We don't necessarily have to build this out here, but I think it's a good idea to keep track of that.
And for the people who might not be so familiar with Fastgen, the database here comes built into Fastgen and it's just available off the bat. You don't have to connect any external services or anything.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's a Postgres database. You have it in the UI interface. You don't have to use your own, but you can if that's what you want to do.
Okay.
So you can connect your external DB as well.
That's really nice.
Okay. Also comes with all the other Postgres features like indexing. I mean, can actually index time. Doesn't really matter with that data volume, but so yeah. Now we have our table, phone number, message, schedule time, and status. So I would say, let's go and set up our endpoint.
That sounds like a plan.
So I've selected a post endpoint here, as we will be creating some kind of resource. What do we want to name it? Schedule SMS. Here I'm setting the endpoint. So each endpoint you spin up with Fastgen will automatically get a custom domain with the endpoint or URL path for that endpoint. I will be setting it to public, so we don't have to handle any authentication for this demo. And here we are. Our endpoint is up. Let's think about this. The first thing we want to do is we want to write our data that we receive from toddle into our database.
That makes sense.
So for that, I'm grabbing a DB query action, which is a very powerful action that allows you to write SQL to interact with your database. A queue message, as that's what it will do. And here, as I said, you can write SQL. We also have a nifty feature with a very original name called our AI Copilot, where you can have the SQL auto-generated for you.
Yeah, I think it makes sense probably keeping the name people are familiar with. Or you could ask,
that's what we thought.
Ask the AI what to call it. That's always an option.
Exactly, yeah. So let's insert into our table the following data points. And our status.
I think you misspelled phone number in the first part.
You are very correct. That's very helpful to have someone.
It is nice, almost as good as a Copilot. Yeah.
I think even better. I'd love to have that always when coding.
Yeah. And so here you're writing SQL directly, right? So for this,
yes.
Normally there is a bit of code. It's not programming code. It's a relatively simple language, right? But as you say, you can also actually get the AI to assist you with this if you're not so familiar with it.
Exactly, yes. And it actually works really well. So it has full access to all the context data you have in your flows. So you can go ahead and literally describe what you want to do. Also we have a nifty test query feature here, so you can see whether it actually works the way you want to.
Yeah, that's really nice. I think especially for people just getting started and SQL might not be the most friendly to look at. I think that was their intention. You can decide for yourself whether the creators of the language succeeded in that. But having an AI that basically can translate what you want to do directly into SQL code just makes it so much easier, right?
Absolutely. So now what I'm doing right here is I am making use of our variable syntax. So you can access the data that comes in through the request to the endpoint. You can access all the data that any of the other actions inside your flow output. And so, as I'll assume you will be sending me the data in the body of the HTTP request, I'm just selecting body here, which will grab the data that will get sent to this schedule message endpoint. And then I'm just going to set the keys. And here I'll hard code the status value, as anything you send here should automatically have the status scheduled.
Yeah.
So now we can test the query, and we have an issue. So let's quickly check our database.
It said schedule time.
Yep. So I called it schedule time and not scheduled time. Actually, it's just
the joys of coding.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes.
This is unfiltered.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's test it again. Okay. Now it seems to work. Okay.
So now we've saved the request to the database here, right? So when I'm going to send you data, you're going to put it into the database.
Yes, exactly. And we can also actually test that really quickly, because I think that's a nifty feature where we can just simulate the body content here. It's not a real number. Let me grab some timestamp here. Okay. And let's see if it works. Okay, everything's green. That's always a good sign. We don't get any errors back. So let's check if our database actually contains that value. It does. So cool. Seems to work.
Perfect.
Okay. We can do some error checking here if you want to. I think to keep it simple, I'll just send you back a success.
Yeah, I mean, obviously in a real world scenario, you always want to wear your belt and suspenders. But in this case, I promise to behave and send you only nice things. So you can take my, and since this is a public endpoint, I think everyone watching right now implicitly promised the same thing, that they wouldn't dream of start sending nonsense to this endpoint. I think
that's why we don't need any validation here.
No, we have community instead. Yeah,
exactly. Way better.
Yes, it's much better.
So yeah, as a last step, the only thing that's left to do is to deploy it live. And perfect. Now under this URL, you can see in the clipboard, you can reach this endpoint.
So are we done then?
Well, no, we need the scheduler, but do you want to build the front end first, or should we continue with the scheduler first?
Oh, what do you think? I think maybe let's go and build the front end. We'll build a quick version, and then if there's time left, we can spend some more time on adding some design and making it less look like something I've designed. Perfect. Okay, well, I'm gonna switch over then. Now that we've got the endpoint, do you mind pasting it just in the private chat here? Because then I'll copy it.
Yes, will do. Here you go.
Excellent. So I'll go and share my screen. So I've loaded up a new project called No Meeting. So you'll be able, when we're done, to find it on nomeeting.toddle.site. We'll also add it to the description of the live stream video on YouTube when we get there, and we'll also paste it in the chat when we're getting there, right? So yeah, this is Toddle. I don't know if everyone here has seen it before, but yeah, this is for building the front end. So while Konstantin just built our lovely backend we can now send data to, we're going to start building the small form here that lets us essentially decide when to schedule this message, right? So let's start by altering the title, get out of that meeting. And so the things we need here, I think we'll add a form. First of all, we normally, when we add in, just try and put in some placeholder content. Right now, it just says first name, last name. I think we'll adjust that. So I think the first bit we probably want in this label, I think we'll say phone number. And then here for the input field, we can change the, let's go and change the title to phone number. And then obviously your country code will be your own. Since I'm in Denmark, I'm just going to put in a placeholder to indicate that you need the country code as well. I think that's probably going to be quite important as we're most likely using an international service for this one. I think in this case, I think the next bit is going to be the message. And I think actually in this case, we don't want to message. We'll add here just, I think, initially an text area we can use here. We can add that right here. And this basically allows us to put in a little bit more of a message, right? And then the final step here is going to be that you can be able to set a delay, I think in minutes, for how long should it wait before it sends a message. So if you know you're going into a meeting, you're like, I've got a meeting in 5 minutes and I reckon I want to try and get out of it in 10. You can say, okay, give me like, what'll be 15 minutes, right? So I'm going to go and just copy that whole section right here and paste that in at the bottom, right? And then this one will be delay in minutes. There we are, right? Actually, let's just fix the formatting on that. We are on live stream after all. And this placeholder will be, let's say, 15, right? Delay. Right. So we basically have our form here set up with everything we need. Maybe actually, I think I'm going to go and move this a little bit around. I think I want the message first and the phone number. This kind of works. And just add a bit of styling. We'll say 100%. That looks a bit better. Do the same thing for these. Right. So the next step for us here is now we need to send this data. When you submit the form, we need to send it to an API. In order to do that in Toddle, you first have to capture the information in the input fields. And we do that by binding it to variables. So I'm going to go and create here. By deselecting, I get to see my data tab here on the right. I'm going to go and create a variable here called message. And we'll start with nothing. And we'll do the same here for phone number. And a third one here for delay. We'll actually set that to, what should the default be? Let's say 15 minutes will be our default, right? And so now that I've got these variables, I can choose these different inputs, whether it's the text area or the input fields, and I can go and bind that to the different variables. So I'll bind this to message. I'll pick this one and bind to my phone number, and the final one and bind it to delay. And what you'll see, the first two doesn't change because we bound them to an empty string, so there's no content there. The last one immediately is F15. So when you're binding to a variable in Toddle, it basically does what's called a two-way binding. When you change something in the input field, it'll update the variable. And if you some other way update the variable, it'll also update the value in the input field. So those two are now linked or bound together. So whenever you change one, the other always changes. And this is really nice because we need variables as a way to store the data so we can eventually send it to our API. So now we need to go and do that. So we're going to go and create a new API, and I'm going to call it interrupt meeting. And then now we need the specifications from that we got from Konstantin here. So I'm going to change this to, I believe we set a post request.
We did, yes.
We're going to go and I'm going to go and copy this link right here. And I can paste that in, and Toddle is going to sort of understand that URL, say, okay, so you've got a base URL here, which is the server you're running on. Here, the fastgenapp.com domain, and then the meeting excuse, which is the app Konstantin's building, and then the endpoint here we saw he created with schedule message. The next step here is we need to create a body, and that should be a JSON payload, which is the default when you're sending post messages in Toddle. So we're going to create an object, and I believe we needed 3 properties on it, and the first one was, we now have to make sure we actually spell them right. So is it phone?
It is phone. Yep, that's it.
And we're going to bind that to our phone number. So that way, this object is now going to have those 3 properties, just like it expected in Fastgen. And it's going to get those values, in this case, from the phone number. I think the second was message lowercase.
You have a good memory, yep.
Yes, and then the last one was, schedule.
It was scheduled time. It was supposed to be scheduled, but then we quick fix it to
schedule time like this. Now, the thing is that that's not what we called it here. We didn't call it schedule time. I'm just going to go full screen so you can see the formula better, right? So if I say 15 and he's expecting a date, that's not quite going to work. So we're going to need to do a little bit of adjustment here. The first thing we'll start by doing is, since it's in 15 minutes, the date, we're basically going to take the time right now, add 15 minutes to it, convert it to a date, and then send it off. So that's the plan, right? We're going to say now, and then we're going to say timestamp. So that gets us the timestamp. So here you can see a long number. Timestamp here, and this is a general like internet/computer convention. It's the number of seconds, or in our case, in JavaScript's case, the number of milliseconds since the 1st of January 1970, which is when time began, apparently. Nobody knows what happened before the 1st of January 1970. It's a mystery, but that is apparently when the first time came. So now we've got that. Now what we need to do is we need to add some time to this. What am I doing here? Timestamp add, right? And actually, before we do that, let's just go and then say date from timestamp, right? So now we can turn that back into a date. This doesn't look like a date time here. It's going to be on our end converted to an actual date representation before it gets sent off to Fastgen, right? But so what we need to add here is we're going to start with our delay. And now we need to convert from our number in minutes to milliseconds. So the first thing we're going to do is convert to seconds, which is going to multiply by 60. I hope I'm doing math right. And then that's going to give us the number in seconds, but in this case, we're working in milliseconds. So we're going to multiply by 1,000. You could absolutely multiply by 60,000, but then when someone comes along and look at this, they're going to go, where did that number 60,000 came from? So by doing it this way, you're technically more inefficient, but you actually can't explain what's going on, right? So this should give us a schedule time in 15 minutes. Let's just go and do a quick test here. So let's just, if we go into edit mode and say, your cat died. We're going to start out pretty gruesome here. Come home now, right? We're going to add a phone number. I'm not gonna add mine at this point, and we'll say, let's say 5 minutes, right? We'll say 5 minutes. Now, if I go and look at we can pause it. Now, if I go and look at my API and look at the body in here, we should see that we've got our phone number. That's correct. The message, we actually see that show up here, and we get the right delay over here. So this should all work now. Our next step is then to call this API when we submit our form. And with forms, this is an HTML convention. And you can do, of course, click this button, but you can actually do a submit event on the form, and then it handles a lot of the lovely keyboard interaction like enter and all these things for you. So if you go and use the submit event here on a form, you get a lot of nice interaction for free. So what we're going to do is that when you submit the form, we're going to call our API interrupt meeting. And then at this point, we're not really going to do anything else. One thing that might be nice to do is saying, well, if we send this now, and we can actually just try and send it. Let's just go into test mode and click submit. And we don't see anything because we haven't really told our UI, hey, you need to update, like something needs to happen when I click, right? So the only way we can really see if this worked is we can go into our API and see that we did get from the last invocation a response that says successful. So now maybe next step should be for you, Konstantin, to have a look and see if you actually received this request.
Yep,
should we switch
received
over to
it
your side?
20
Okay,
seconds
I'm
ago.
enabling your screen.
Yep, so we just went into the logs of the endpoint we just created. We can see my previous debug test request, and then 44 seconds ago, the request that Andreas sent over.
Perfect. Maybe we should actually not. If we want this to actually work, maybe we do need to. Maybe I should be a little bit more trusting of our lovely community. So I'm just going to send one with an actual phone number here. And if you do need to call toddle the company for whatever reason, that's also where you do it. Then we'll set down I think a 5-minute delay is going to be fine, and we'll submit that again. And did you receive that?
Yep.
Perfect.
Looks good to me.
Excellent. So yeah, now we've got the basics up. We can send the request. Obviously, we could also do a little bit of nice adjustment of UI and experience on the toddle end. But I think let's go and build the happy path. Let's go and make it work. And then once we make it work, we can go and improve it afterwards.
Alrighty. So then the only thing that's left on the backend side is to build the workflow that actually sends the SMS via Twilio. So the way we're going to do it here is with what we call time-based workflow, or commonly known as a cron job. So essentially just a workflow that does things at a specific predefined time interval. And the idea here is that we will set the workflow to do something every minute, namely check whether there is a new entry in our table with a timestamp that has already passed or is equal to the time now, and has the status of scheduled, meaning that it hasn't been sent before, because we don't want to send the same SMS twice. And yeah, so let's call this one message dispatcher. We can set it to active, that's fine. And per default, we already check every minute, but you can change it to any time interval you like. So the first step here that we need to do is we need to check for the records in our table. So again, some rather simple SQL. So we're going to say, get us all the records from our message request table, where the schedule, we call it schedule time, is previous or smaller to the time now, and has a status scheduled. Good to me. Let's test it. Okay. And so next we could either go right into sending the Twilio SMS, but there might be a case where there's more than just one entry that is ready to be sent out. So to make sure we don't miss anything, let's add a loop. Now with our loop data action, you can loop over a collection of items. So we'll call this one send just loop. And we want to loop over only the returns that our database query action here returns. So the handy thing is I can just check which actions are available. We have our check queue action here, and we want to loop over the results of that action. Actually, it's singular result. Okay. So now for every record that is returned, here we loop over every record, and then we send the actual SMS. I've already connected my Twilio account to this project. You can simply do that with the API key that you get from Twilio. You can buy a number there and then select from which number you want to send the SMS. And so now what we need to do is we need to get the number from whatever record we're looping over here. To do that, we use the item syntax, which always takes the current item that is presented in the loop that we are in at the execution. And I think we called it phone_number. We'll do the same for the message. And save that one. And now the only thing that's left to do is to change the status. So let's add yet another database query action. And say we want to update the record in our table message requests where the status, actually we want to send it, change it to the status sent, where let's pass the system ID of the item of the current loop. So again, we go in here, take the item, and the system ID here, I'll take the automatically assigned ID that the table assigns to each new record that is added. So let's say system ID, it's tested, okay, it's valid SQL, and that should be it.
So can I ask why not just, couldn't we just delete the row? Why are you choosing to set the status here?
Well, I mean, we could delete the row, as I said before, that's a totally valid approach. In case we wanted to add functionality to try to resend an SMS, if Twilio fails, for example, it could always be that the network request fails or that Twilio has like a short downtime. And if we wanted to retry sending a message that didn't go out, there we could use the status. In the way we built it right now, the status doesn't really serve a purpose other than differentiating between messages that have been sent or haven't been sent. In this case, it's totally valid. We could also just remove that record from the table. But again, then we would maybe lose messages that didn't go out for some reason or another.
That makes a lot of sense. And I suppose if we later wanted to figure out how many messages we had sent and how many failed and the ratio and do a whole analytics thing in another live stream.
Exactly. It's always good to keep the options open, right?
Exactly, right? One more question. So this workflow right here looks a lot like what you built before. Can you sort of tell what's the difference between, in this case, workflows and APIs or endpoints?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is extremely similar. Like the only difference that you have between the API builder and the workflow builder is that the workflow builder has no ability to return success or error messages, as there's no one to return it to. And the triggers are different, but apart from that, the functionality is pretty much the same. The reason why I've opted to create it the way I did is because the time delay actions that we have in here right now, they don't accept variables at this point in time. We'll add that within the next couple of weeks. So yeah, that's the easiest way to just do the scheduling part of what we're doing here.
Nice. So this seems like we might be pretty much there. Do we need to deploy this, or is it
already did? So
it's already deployed. So
yeah.
this should run every minute, and we should. I suppose I should get a text message soon. That's very exciting. I think maybe one thing I want to add, and maybe we'll, while we wait for that, maybe we'll jump, because it was 5 minutes. I think it'll be up anytime. They're still all scheduled. Yes. Can we see what it says? 16. Mine is 32. Yeah, so it should pick any time now, right? No,
which one was yours?
That's 19. Yeah, that's the last one. That's next time the workflow text that should be sending, right? It says so for people not like, when you're looking at a database, you're always seeing the Greenwich Mean Time. That's why it's an hour behind, right? Oh,
we have an error. Okay, so what is this? Message variable didn't resolve to an array. Okay. That's an interesting one.
So did you say here you had select start?
Let's test what this, because this does not return anything right now.
My schedule time and status equals scheduled. Is it the status we misspelled? You said that.
Let's see. Status.
No, that looks pretty right.
Scheduled. That looks pretty good. But it must have something to do with this, because this should be returning something here.
So
what did we do wrong? Oh, something is up here.
Oh yeah, that's behind the. Aha.
Yep. Okay.
There we are.
That looks better.
Perfect.
Okay. So let's redeploy that. And
to be fair, too many things were going right for this to be a live stream. We had people in the chat saying they didn't believe we were doing it live because everything was working. So now we've got proof it is live.
Exactly. And we have another error. Okay, this time it is from Twilio, and Twilio complains that the number is not a valid phone number.
That's totally fair. We completely made that up. So maybe we'll just get rid of the first two test ones. The last one should be a real one. I've got the phone right here. It's a Generation 1 toddle phone, limited edition. Yes.
Okay. Oh, forgot that one. All right. So third time's the charm. Okay, now we have yet another Twilio error.
Ooh, the read not been able for the region indicated by the number 2. Ooh. That sounds like a Twilio settings, doesn't it?
It does.
Alternatively, we can try with your phone number if you're.
Let's do, yeah. I'll send you. You want to? Oh, actually, I can just change it in the database. So.
Yes, I mean you can also I can send you the live link here. If you want.
Let's do it that way.
So here you go. So whenever you're building in toddle, all your versions are always live. So I'm just seeing, I think we are only watching your Fastgen screen now. I don't know if you're sharing the.
Okay, now you should see.
Perfect.
Increase the size a bit. Okay, what's our excuse, Andreas?
I don't know. What's an excuse? One I get a lot is baby is crying. It's your turn.
Okay.
That seems to be a pretty regular one in my household at the moment.
Yeah. Totally Excellent. Believable.
And that is a hard one to argue against.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's very true.
It is my turn.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's submit that.
And I think if we have time at the end, we should probably show a nice friendly message when you're done with that in the toddle app as well. But
okay, I will manually trigger it again so we don't have to wait. And we have another issue. Wow.
I think that's just the same one. It just hasn't been enough time, isn't it?
Well, oh yeah, right. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, you gotta. I think again in the era we might want to make it handle an empty array without throwing an error, but for the demo purposes, we don't necessarily need to do all parts, right? So this says 42, so it should be now. 4 seconds past 42, I would say, yeah.
And it already triggered itself.
Green.
That looks very clean indeed. Okay.
Did you get a text?
Well, indeed, the baby is crying.
Ah, it's your turn. Perfect. Well done. Nice. So obviously, I think it's very unfortunate that Twilio is discriminating against people in Denmark. But
I agree.
Yeah, that'll be the pro-paid tier of this app. If you need a different region, we'll bump up the pricing. Yeah. So so I think I do want to open it up for questions, but I think before we do that, I feel like maybe just finishing the last bit off in toddle. All I really want to add is that when you're done sending, it'll then go and show you a nice message saying, "Great, you've done it," right?
Let's do it.
Right. So I am gonna switch back to my screen right here. And so what I'm doing now I've got this nice form here, and I basically want to say you should only show this form when you're not when you right after you load the screen. So if you're sending the request, if it's either in transit or if it's done, don't worry about it. So I can do that by clicking attributes here and then say show, and I can specify that with a formula. So we've used formulas for a lot of different things, for binding text, etc. We can also use them in like an on and off way and saying, if there's a value for this formula, you should show this form. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say my API, and then if it has data, and then I'm going to change it to not, which is another way of saying if the data is not there, that means we haven't made the request yet. And we can also say or on this side, if that API is loading. So if there's data available because we did the API, or if it's loading, then don't show this formula, right? So now it's gone. And then I can add just here a simple paragraph that says loading. And I'm going to show that right here. I'm going to show that if our API is loading right there. And then I'm going to duplicate this. I can hold Alt and drag that to duplicate. And this one, I'm only going to show if there's data. And this one's going to say, great. You got no need to worry about the TPS reports then. I assume that's what we're doing for the meeting. I don't really know. So what this does is basically, if we just refresh the whole thing, we'll reset all our variables and start over. So what it should do now, having a bit of stream lag, there we are. If we go and test that, I'm gonna say, yeah, I'm running out of idea. Any ideas for what the excuse should be here? What are we doing?
Well, we had the cat, we had the baby. Maybe someone ran into your car.
Yeah. Sorry, hon. I totaled the car again. Right. That one. We'll just do mine again, even though we're not getting and 15 minutes is fine. So now when I say submit, we're getting loading right away to show that as an indicator. And then immediately when the request is done, we go, great, no need to worry about that. So you can handle these different stages. You can do all this, all the different parts of the API. Make sure your users understand every step of the journey, right? And make sure you actually give them some tactile and visual feedback from your application. Great. I'm thinking I have questions for you for sure, but I think maybe we should start by saying if anybody in the chat has any questions they want to ask us, just type them in the chat now, and I'll get to them. Yeah, I'm quite curious. First of all, you mentioned early on in your database that you're running off Postgre.
Yes.
And I think this is something that is, for me, a little bit interesting, because I find that a lot of time when people are building, and I've heard from a lot of our users as well, a lot of time when people are building backends, they often start out with one of the sort of easier to get started database, something like Airtable, for example, which is fantastic if you're just getting started. But at least what we often see is people sort of run into some limitations. So maybe can you explain a little bit about why you sort of made the decision to go with Postgre for Fastgen and what that means for your users?
Yeah, absolutely. So the decision in the end purely came down to what we thought people would need the most. So we talked to a bunch of user interviews before we even started building Fastgen, and it just became clear that Postgres still seems to be like the de facto standard, where you cover the most use cases for most users. That said, we are already working on several other database integrations. You just mentioned Airtable, which is one of them. So we are slowly but surely adding more database options that our users can use. But yeah, again, to start out, Postgres simply seemed to be the one that was most widely requested.
And did I hear you right that that Postgre with you is you host all of it? So if I sign into Fastgen and open up my account, I immediately have a Postgre database ready for me to use.
Yep, that's exactly right. Every time you create a new project, you can create as many tables as you like with that. Limits are very generous in terms of how much you can store in there. And again, as I said in the beginning, if you already have a project maybe, or just want to use your own PostgreSDB, you can simply add the credentials and it will replace our hosted PostgreSDB with your own.
Excellent. That's very good. I mean, we have about 10 minutes left. I saw that there was ChatGPT on your as one of the integrations. Would it be possible to essentially do the same app up here, but since we were so bad at coming up with excuses, do you think we could get ChatGPT to help us?
I think we could, yeah.
Should we? Do you want to give that a go now?
Let's try it out. I will quickly grab an API key from OpenAI.
Also, just to be clear, we did not plan this bit at all. So I'm very happy that wasn't. I kind of sprung it on you, but I'm really glad that you're game.
Yeah, sure. You might need to entertain the chat a bit while I'm getting the token, but once we get that, should be good to go.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, and I say, anybody in the chat, if you have any questions you want to ask us about Fastgen or about Toddle, how they work together, anything you're looking for, now is a perfect time. Especially Toddle questions right now when he's looking for setting up ChatGPT. But anything that's on your mind, please don't hold back. So yeah, if I've got a setting, I've got a question here from Mike, which asks if I can explain a bit more about how hosting works in Toddle. And I'm happy to. So Toddle is a sort of fully integrated platform. So it includes the editor as well as version control and hosting. So we host all your applications, including like all the different branch and development versions of it. We specifically chose to do that because it allows us to do a lot of optimizations that are often quite difficult if you're doing your own hosting. So Toddle is run on top of Cloudflare's edge network, and that means there is, I think, close to 400 and something data centers all over the world that are running these workers and actually running your Toddle applications close to your users. So when they go and say, can you please show me this page, it'll get rendered in a region very close to them. And setting all that up, managing that, getting all that done can be quite cumbersome. So it's in order to sort of ensure we can handle all that for our users by essentially having that built into the platform. And all this is free for free projects, of course. You can host as many projects, free projects with us as you want. And for the first 1 million requests a month, there's no charge. Right. Then okay. I get a question here, a quick one. I think we'll take one more before we'll go, which is Fastgen an IPaaS? I mean, I think PaaS is Platform as a Service. I'm not actually 100% sure what the I stands for.
Maybe I think isn't it like integration platform as a service?
Ooh, yes, that at least definitely makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. To be completely honest, I'm not exactly sure what that entails. I think it's something with self-hosting. Can you add some context, maybe the commenter?
Well, actually, I think while he's getting back to us, I'll ask another one. He asked a really good question. So this is SKO Digital, and he's asking, when would someone use something like Fastgen to integrate systems versus simply integrating directly from Toddle? I think that's actually a really, really good question. So there's a lot of services that you can call directly from Toddle. There's a lot of APIs where you don't really need a backend. This right here is a really good example of when you do, because you need a database to actually store this. So anytime you need a database to store data between your requests, between users, you need something to connect to. And at the same time, a service like Twilio, and especially here where we're doing scheduling and actually waiting for later, well, since Toddle runs only the front end, even if you try to do that in Toddle, it will require the user to keep their browser open. So there's a lot of things you want to run on a server. There's a lot of things you want to run in a system like Fastgen. Also, so actually connect your users to the data they share, right? So anytime where you need a data store, anytime when you need a workflow that you don't want run inside the browser, that's when you reach for something like Fastgen. And to be honest, that is almost all of the cases. There's not that many use cases in Toddle where you don't need to connect to a backend. There are a few where you can go directly to the API you need, but in most cases, having a backend like Fastgen just make sure, like, enables you to do so much more, right? Are we live with the ChatGPT version?
Well, I haven't tried it yet, but I have just connected the key. So now we can interact with ChatGPT and wrote a prompt. I'm not sure how good it is. So maybe let's first run this and see what we get from the from GPT back. And then let's see if we can use this. Okay, this is from the I side.
I mean, it's a little bit polite, but other than that, I like it. Yeah.
Okay, should we just use that?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good.
Okay, cool. Well, so the process is fairly simple. So this action generates the return, and we only have to access it in our flow. So if we go here, we see the syntax for this is action generate context excuse and then content. So let us replace our message content with our ChatGPT action and access the value inside the content key. And that's already it. So now we just need to schedule a new message. And we should get the GPT generated message.
Are you running this with your phone number again?
Yep. Okay, so I just submitted it via the toddle front end. So the message in here doesn't really matter now, as we are using the GPT action output instead.
I feel like I heard the sound of someone receiving a text message there. Is that correct?
I don't think so. It's not 57 yet.
Okay, fair enough. I just heard the quintessential cell phone interruption sound. But yeah, we're getting there. So while we're awake, we got another question here, which is Fastgen is working on a native Superbase integration. Is that correct? Is it
yes.
out, or is there a ETA?
It is not out yet. ETA is likely in January of next year. But yeah.
That sounds very interesting. Toddle is built on top of Superbase. We use it as our main database and authentication engine. So we're big fans, and that sounds like it would be a really nice integration. I think you could do a lot of really cool things with it. I'm looking forward to that one.
Twilio is making our life difficult again.
Yes.
Now with my phone number,
now it's
apparently.
complained about phone number.
Oh wait, no, that was something else. So see, not scripted. Definitely not scripted. This is live.
Well, I mean, if it was, we would throw in things just to make sure people didn't think it was scripted, though.
Exactly. Yeah.
So suppose in the end you never know.
Exactly. Okay. No, actually, it was my mistake.
Yeah, you put the message generated font. Yeah, that's fair enough.
Exactly.
Okay, in that case, you get a pass this time, Twilio.
That's correct. So here it was our item. What do we call it? Phone number?
Yep. Yeah, phone underscore number, yeah. But then, since if the Twilio step fails, does that mean it's not going to execute the last one? So it wouldn't have updated the status, right?
Let's see. That is correct.
Scheduled. Yeah, makes sense. Oh, okay. It looks good. There's the sound.
On this side. And yeah, I need to leave the meeting urgently as my child isn't feeling well at school, and they've just called on me to pick them up. We'll catch up on the discussion later.
That sounded totally legit. I wouldn't have questioned that at all.
Me neither.
So I actually just have a last thing I'm going to do. I'm going to go on to, which I haven't, I'm going to go and publish our toddle app. I'll just quickly switch over to that one. So I'll just go and publish that and going, it's live. let's just wait for that to go live. And now you can go to no meeting, all one word, .toddle.site. If you need to get out of an urgent meeting, assuming you're in one of the Twilio approved countries.
Exactly.
Yes. So yeah, now you have it. It's ready if you need to bail out of it. And let's be honest, none of us like long meetings. So now you have a tool to easily bail on them with really, really good, solid ChatGPT generated excuses, right? You can leave the necessary blank now because we fixed it for you. So I think finally, I just want to say once again, thank you so much for joining us. I think this was really fun. I enjoyed it, and I think we made something that's going to make a lot of people's lives better by being able to sneak out of various corporate meetings. And again, for anyone joining, if you haven't tried Fastgen, go and sign up right away. It's free to get started. You can try it out, and again, very generous plan. And if you haven't tried Toddle, again, go and sign up, and just like you can get started for free and actually build really cool things before you're even ready to launch, right? So thank you very much, Constantine. Thank you to Fastgen. Thank you to everyone watching. It's been a blast. And this we'll upload the video to YouTube as well, so you can share it afterwards.
Thanks for having me, Andreas. It was very fun.